Hey everyone. Now I'm going to tell you what is the best electricity source, in my opinion anyway, that you can get. And I think it's solar photovoltaic cells that you have in panels on the roof at home. And here's why I think that. All energy sources, right? What have we got? They've got the big ones. We've got coal, oil, gas, nuclear, wind, solar, hydro. But I'm saying solar, and I'm particular about the solar that I'm saying. I'm not saying just any old solar, because you can make solar power from heating things and using them to turn a turbine, but I'm talking specifically about photovoltaic cells and on your house. And the reason for that is, that's the only energy source that pretty much anyone with a house, of course that's a caveat, anyone can make at home by themselves, meaning you're not reliant on someone else. You could, if you've got a lot of land. I know at least one person who had a large property and he had a little wind turbine as well, but most people don't have the land for that. But solar panels you can have on your own house. Now, the reason that's good is because you then own your electricity. Now, I've said this before, when I put a big solar system on this house, I compared it to owning your electricity as opposed to renting it. So regardless of the source, if you're connected to the grid, you're reliant on them, which means you're at the mercy of price increases, the daily rental, what they call the poles and line. What do they call it? Poles and lines, poles and wires or something? The upkeep of the grid, basically. So that's irrelevant of what the source is, whether it's bloody nuclear, gas or coal or solar or whatever. It's still someone else's power, which means someone else has control over you. And if you haven't guessed by now, I like having control of things. So solar on your own house. So let's look at why that's a problem. Well, it's not sunny at night, obviously. And also, like here in Brisbane, we've had a few rainy days in the week, and a couple of those days I had to use a bit of power from the grid. That being said, I still think we're not there yet with solar. It's still pricey, but not that pricey anymore, not like it used to be. But that's going to come down, you know it is. So I've only got a fraction of my roof covered. If it was dirt cheap, I'll just cover the whole lot and make sure I've got power even on cloudy days. The other thing with that is, of course, you need a battery. Now, I've got a battery. It's one of those horrific Tesla things, which I don't... The capacity of it's good though. So I've got a battery and solar. So together, for the most part, I'm done. And I did a test a couple of years ago, over the year, how much solar I produced and how much energy I consumed over the year. And even with an electric car, I generated 114% of my requirements for the year. So I thought that was pretty good. Now, as I said, that's with an electric car. If I didn't have that electric car, really, this would be easy. Okay, so it's not that far out of reach, really, when you think about it. What I see happening, though, is there's talk of batteries for, communities, like a couple of suburbs, a street or a town or whatever. I still don't like that, because you're still at the mercy of someone else. And as long as that's the case, you're bound by someone else's rules. And of course, they can change it, you know that. So to be completely independent, your own solar and battery is the way to go. Now, granted, we're not quite there with cheap enough solar to just cover the roof and make sure we've got absolutely enough, but I think we'll get there. So I want people to focus on the fact that that's what they should be looking for, regardless of where you stand on, fossil fuels or not. I can't run a coal-powered plant here at home either. Maybe I would. I wouldn't. But you get what I'm saying. It doesn't matter where it comes from out there. And another thing that comes up is, okay, if we're going to run solar, these are the naysayers for solar. They say, if you're going to run the world on solar, look at all the land we'll need for solar panels. And I think about that. But most of the solar will be on people's roofs. Well, around here. I'm speaking for Australia. The rest of the world, you've got to sort yourselves out, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. But most solar down here is on people's roof. You just Google Earth anywhere on a suburb in Australia, you'll see solar panels on a lot of people's roofs. Now, given that they'll say, let's say, for example, to power 50,000 homes, they need this much land to put solar panels. That's sort of the argument against it. And I say, well, hang on a minute. To power 50,000 homes, a lot of them will have those solar panels on their homes. So they don't need the land they're saying. Let's say they need this amount of, megawatt hours a year. And the space, therefore, needed to provide that is this. it doesn't mean it's got to be out in the middle of nowhere and we've got to find some land for it, because there's already a lot of land on the roof. So obviously that rules out flats, things like, well, flats basically the big one, and high rises. But if you look around, there's a lot of houses here, and there's a lot that don't have solar as well, so they can get it, once it gets cheaper. So your own solar, your own battery, and then no one can tell you what to do. So like this house, I run a server and a network 24 hours a day. I've got a fridge, a freezer, some computers and stuff, lights, general household stuff. And overnight, it uses, on average, 450 watts. That's the power. Sorry, not usage using watt hours or kilowatt hours. I'm talking about the power consumption is about 450 watts overnight when I'm not really doing anything. So that power, we've got more efficient with things. Like in the days of old, in the 80s or 90s, it wouldn't be uncommon to see a 100-watt light bulb. That's 100 watts. Now, of course, we all got LEDs. They use close to nothing, like 5 or 9 watts. So 3 of those light bulbs from back in the day is pretty much my whole house power overnight. So, if things get a bit more efficient and we start thinking about it, and the solar panels will get cheaper, which they will, then it has to be the go. So don't get distracted by these plans that say the government will do this and they're putting this. Anything the government's going to do isn't going to help you, by the way, of course. It'll help someone, but it won't be you. So hang in there, because I think it's going to be the go. And again, solar without battery is kind of pointless. It's just that batteries have to come down too. But rather than thinking, okay, maybe we should go, I don't know, let's say there's talk of nuclear. Now, Australia doesn't have any nuclear power. And we've come this far with renewables and solar. They're getting pretty good, you've got to admit. It's like, well, why start now with this nuclear? Why bother? I mean, no one wants to talk about the waste, but why bother with it if we really don't have to? So, I'm pretty much against that. Coal, I don't really care. Coal, it's been going for years. We've still got it. Gas to, pick up the slack when we need it. And hydro, Tassie's running off bloody hydro. They're doing fine. So we can do this, but again, I'm not coming from a hippie point of view, like I know some of you out there are saying, let's go green. No, I'm going, let's go self-control of our electricity. So that's why solar on your roof's the best. And there's talk of the government going to charge you for excess feeding into the grid. Not pay you, but charge you, because their grid can't handle it. They don't know what to do with all the solar power that's being produced during the day. I mean, if more electric cars get going, they'll suck some of that up if people charge them at the day, but it'll probably have to be at work if people ever go back to work. So there's a few, things, but if you have solar at home, your own battery, the more capacity we end up getting as it becomes cheaper and more available, it would be a good opportunity to just forget about the grid forever, because really, what are we powering? A couple of lights, the oven, I added that up. I think I did a video on that too, and it doesn't use all that much for a meal. Again, everyone's case is going to be different, but it's only going to get better. That's the way I see it. So try and get your control. Don't let everyone have your data. Tesla don't need to see when you boil a kettle. I wish there was some competition to that fucking company, but there isn't yet. So they do have a good... Their Powerwall is a high capacity battery. I'll give it that. But yeah, once we get a battery that just simply charges and discharges, solar charges up during the day, you run your lights and that at night. That's the way to go. So that's my rant for today. Until next time, take it easy. We gotta take